Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 24th, 2020 Westminster City Council meeting. For the record, let's note that all council members are present. Senior staff is required. At this time, we would ask you please rise and join us with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Ms. Parker, if you would please take the roll.
Mayor Atchison.
Yes.
Councilor DeMott.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Seitz.
Here.
Councilor Seymour.
Here.
Councilor Scully.
Here.
Councilor Smith.
Here.
Councilor Bowles.
Here.
Members of council, the next item up on the agenda is item number 3, those minutes of the February 20th, 2020. Mr. DeMott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the City Council approve the minutes of the February 10th, 2020 and February 11th, 2020 meetings as presented.
I have a motion. I have a second, Ms. Seitz.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is a proclamation regarding the League of Women Voters. Ms. Scully, if you would, please.
We could have Marge, Ennis, Dan Sutton, Karen Hardy come forward, and anybody else you'd like to bring. How do you do? Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Welcome. These ladies are from the League of Women Voters. Tonight we are doing a proclamation celebrating the League of Women Voters 100th anniversary. So this year marks the 100th anniversary of the League of Women Voters, which was founded on February 14th, 1920 in Chicago, Illinois. Born of the women's suffrage movement, the League was organized when it became apparent that the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution would finally be ratified, guaranteeing voting rights to women citizens. On August 18, 1920, Tennessee became the last of the necessary 36 states to ratify the amendment, and it was officially adopted on August 26, 1920. Who knows when Colorado approved women the right to vote? 1893. Isn't that amazing? I love that Colorado is always ahead of the game, always thinking out in front, how to be inclusive, how to celebrate citizens. It's an amazing state to be a part of. And so we passed our referendum granting women the right to vote in November 7th, 1893. And you're new to our group. Would you like to introduce yourself? Peggy Gonder. Peggy Gonder, welcome. Thank you. Anything you guys would like to add?
Lots of things going on. There'll be other celebrations during the year because the ratification of the 19th Amendment was actually in August. So there'll be things going on all year.
And can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you do, you represent, getting the vote out? How do you go about doing that?
Voter registration is one of our big things that we do, and we also try to, we don't support candidates. We only support issues, so but we do hold candidate meetings and try to make the voters educated on for whom they're voting and also the issues. So, for a lot of issues, water, land use.
So we have some big votes coming up here in our system, in our state, in the next couple of months, and then again in November. How would I get registered to vote? Can you help us out with that a little bit?
You can always do it through the Secretary of State's office. And just go to that site and you can register right online. Or you can go to one of the registration motor vehicle. And also we hold voter registration gatherings or like at the college. Lots of other voter registration.
The other thing that's nationwide is vote411.org, and anyone can go online to vote411.org and put in your zip code, and it will bring up all the races. Voter education is one of our main reasons for being. Did you say that as part of the proclamation?
I got it right here.
We passed League of Women Voters was formed in advance of women getting the right to vote for voter education.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I don't think that's how it read, but thank you for clarifying that. And then one last thing I would remind everyone that if you are 18 years old by November 3rd, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
You have the right to vote, not only in our national election, but our primary election. So you can go ahead and get registered. And remember, everyone can vote in the primary election as long as you only fill out one of the ballots.
And another issue that the League nationwide is supporting this year is the 2020 census, encouraging everyone as a resident to respond to the census.
It's online.
That's really important. And can you tell us why that's important?
Well, all of the federal funding that gets proportioned out to each of the states is based on the number of residents of that state and of each local jurisdiction, and also how our congressional districts, and both at the federal level and then at the state level, get reapportioned and redrawn. Is accomplished through that census.
Colorado gets literally billions of dollars from the federal government every year. So the number that the census total that we come up with in 2020 is going to determine how much funding we get on a lot of federal programs like Pell Grants, like SNAP, like Children's Health Programs. That all comes out of the census information, and it goes on for 10 years. So if we miss people in 2020, we won't have a chance to catch up again until 2030.
So remember to go online and complete your census. So this is the City of Westminster, Colorado's proclamation. Whereas the League of Women Voters was founded in 1920 as a mighty political experiment by suffragist Carrie Chapman Catt at the National American Women's Suffrage Association. And whereas their goal was to help the 20 million women who were guaranteed the right to vote by the 19th Amendment understand and carry out their new responsibility as voters. And whereas, with the success of this effort and tireless efforts over the last 100 years to strengthen and uphold its mission to empower voters and defend democracy, the League has become a trusted, nonpartisan organization. And whereas the League has sponsored legislation to protect and strengthen voting rights, free and fair elections, health, civil rights, the environment, social welfare, campaign finance, climate change, and civil liberties. And whereas the League has consistently been noted for its nonpartisan election information, including sponsorship of candidate forums and information on state and local ballot issues, as well as the League's commitment to register, educate, and mobilize voters. And whereas the League believes that active and engaged citizens, irrespective of gender, ethnicity, or political affiliations, are the hallmark of democracy and champions government systems that are open, transparent, inclusive, and equitable. Now therefore, I, Herb Atchison, Mayor of the City of Westminster, on behalf of the entire City Council and staff, do hereby celebrate the 100th anniversary of the League of Women Voters, and call upon the people of Westminster to join me in recognizing their significant contribution to empowering voters and making democracy work. Signed this 24th day of February 2020, Herb Atchison, Mayor. Thank you.
Very nice.
We're going to get some pictures. I think you should do that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Our next item on our agenda is the citizen communication. This is a period of up to 5 minutes for any individual to come forward with an item they'd like to discuss with City Council that is not already set for a public hearing. You may talk about any item. Your time limit is 5 minutes. When the green light starts, your time will start. When it goes to the yellow, that means you have 1 minute left, and your red means your time's up. Let me remind you, if you are here to speak about anything that was in a public hearing recently, your testimony in this portion of it cannot be used as evidence going forward. This is not a public hearing. It is public comment. Again, as a reminder, we do not engage back and forth. We're here to listen to those comments. Council cannot use any information provided during this period of time as evidence for any change or modification to a vote that they've taken. They must use only the criteria and what was presented during a public hearing. With that, I have about a dozen speakers lined up so far, and I'll start with Karen Ray.
Good evening, Council. My name is Karen Ray. I live in Shaw Heights in Westminster. I do want to address this evening and look back a little at the council meeting from 2 weeks ago on the Uplands development. In particular, I'd like to speak against the requested amendments on the land use plan, specifically on the questions of water, the environmental and stewardship, and our finite resources, along with the public land designation in reference to the Uplands proposed development. The 11-5-21 Land Use Plan Code Point 2 specifically poses the question of, does this serve the public purpose, and I believe it does not, that it is detrimental to the surrounding lands. The City Council meeting of 2/10 included an attachment in the public packet. It was attachment 8, the Exhibit A, where there's a correspondence where the city appears, staff and the developer appear to have agreed to a cut by more than 1/2 the required public land designation as part of the Uplands development. The correspondence in your packet was signed by Dave Downing and referred to in an additional part of the attachment by the planning department manager. And just a quote from Mr. Downing's letter to OREID Capital, he says, quote, "We talked about the city's current policy of 12 acres per 1,000 residents, the potential revision of that policy to 10 acres per 1,000 residents, and your proposal, OREID, of the 3 acres per 1,000 residents, which you stated would approximately match the mix within downtown Westminster. In accordance with recent discussion that I had with senior staff, I stated that 5 acres per 1,000 residents would be acceptable to this city." Is this really what was agreed to and that the city is deciding to act on as part of this development, the proposed development on the Pillar of Fire Farm to cut the land designation on one of the most iconic pieces of property in this city? This is a property that gives the city a uniqueness and an identity, and it's very troubling to not only myself, but to residents throughout the area to agree to reductions in the public land dedication. And I truly hope that the City Council does not allow this to occur and that the current policy of 12 acres per 1,000 residents is enforced if this development were to go forward, not the 5 acres per 1,000 referred to in the attachments of your February 10th meeting. Last council meeting, I heard the developer, OREID Capital, tell us that the higher density housing would in fact be more water efficient. that smaller lots and density uses and higher density uses less water, in particular in reference to what is being referred to as Parcel B, Bradburn and Lowell. So what he was actually arguing was that more impervious surface is more water wise. And I had to kind of pinch myself as somebody who has gardened and been part of trying to preserve our natural resources for several decades now. This narrative I find to be absurd and truly unscientific. Climatologists and most of the rest of us have known for a long time that cities are hotter than the surrounding countryside. It's called the urban heat island effect. Cities are largely paved over or built on, so there's no vegetation or moisture to absorb heat and cool the landscape. Asphalt, concrete, and rooftop simply absorbs the sun's energy during the day and re-releases it at night. And in built-out areas with extensive impervious surfaces, water does not soak naturally into the earth. Instead, stormwater rushes across the landscape. So I believe that it is cynical to say that it's better to pave over the land so people don't have lawns to water. It's a matter of what you plant and what kind of a steward of the land you are. In the Denver area as a whole, the percentage of impervious surface in the metro area has increased by 65% in the last 30 years. The conservation partners recently released a study that pointed out that about 10% of the state, an area larger than Rocky Mountain National Park, has been paved over in the last 17 years. So I just wanted to bring these questions up as part of your consideration in your vote later this evening.
Thank you, ma'am. Naomi Decker.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and councilors. My name is Naomi Decker. Hurry, hurry, hurry! That is not an audible called by Peyton Manning at the line of scrimmage, but it's what the developers want you to do. Hurry! Don't pay any attention to the fact that the uplands was not calculated into the 2013 comprehensive plan that was adapted in 2018. Hurry! Don't wait for the newest water and sewer report that will probably show that Westminster, as rumored to not have enough water to even supply the downtown Westminster project. Hurry! Forget Westminster spent over $500,000 in 2015 on a study to determine locations for more water storage tanks. Hurry! Forget about the 2018 Wandering View water leaks due to lack of water pressure. Hurry! Forget about the one-year moratorium on permits in July 2018 due to sewage problems. Please don't hurry until you have a comprehensive, implementable, and affordable plan to deal with the water and sewer issues. Why do you not support a moratorium on new building as you did in July of 2018 due to inadequate sewage disposal? Downtown Westminster is in the 2013 comprehensive plan, but Uplands is not. On page 8.2 of the 2013 comprehensive plan, quote, utility sizing and availability will be particularly important for higher intensity development areas in downtown Westminster. Uplands is not in the 2013 comprehensive plan implemented in 2018. On page 8.5 of the 2013 comprehensive plan, it states, as quote, as the city becomes more densely developed, maintaining the balance between demand for water by new development and the city's water supply will be a significant factor in land use decisions. This is an issue that each and every one of you on the council need to take to heart. Uplands or ORED has been able to pull off some of the oldest tricks in the developers' carpetbag of hoodwinks. The developers were able to use you as the very newly seated city council that will not face re-election soon and do not have to worry about losing your seat. So you can be bold about your decisions not having consequences. The other trick that luckily was thwarted was scheduling hearings during holidays or prime summer vacation time. So be aware of that when this summer, when scheduling developer meetings. And finally, just think of the historic value of this land, how you enjoy and love that view. We love Westminster. You love Westminster. You're giving so much time and effort. It's very near and dear to us. These developers do not live in Westminster. They have no consequences on them. They will be gone. They will take your money, plow up that beautiful farmland, plant urban sprawl and high density. Please consider what you're leaving for future generations of Westminster residents. Thank you.
Richard Decker.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My wife said it pretty much. I've done some very extensive reading on your water supplies, and you barely have enough to do downtown Westminster. Where are they going to get the water for here? You're going to drill wells to the Arapahoe Aquifer or the Denver Aquifer? Their idea that closing it all together will conserve water. It won't, because it'll demand more water, and you don't have it. Good example, 104th and Hooker, your tank is still got a valve that's wide open because they can't shut it. They're afraid the back pressure will blow the tank. I don't know. But my biggest concern after reading through all this, that the developer is planning a special district tax. Now, according to Colorado law, that can be the developer and any people he wants to appoint on it. And they can raise their tax level up to 400%. I know this because my sister-in-law is living with it. And this will not be afforder housing. At 400%, you're going to watch people fly out of here as fast as a rocket goes to Mars. That's how bad it's going to be. And they'll keep the water, they'll keep the land, they'll keep the building, and they'll rent it out to low-income rentals. This will not be anywhere near affordable for anybody. That's all I have to say.
Pat Byrd.
Good evening. When I first heard on TV about Uplands and that there is going to be possibly 2,350 units, my first thought was, my gosh, 4,700 cars. Because I believe it's going to take 2 wage earners to afford one of those units. And 4,700 cars is going to impact that area. Can you imagine what it's going to be like on Lowell and Federal? I can't. And for water, how does it serve the public purpose for more water is needed when you have 4,700 more residents or more? Just think of how many flushes there are, showers there are for 4,700 people. And the high density in this development is very inconsistent with the surrounding area. From an email of one of your planners, the change in parcel B includes a no minimum lot size requirement under the R5 category, which didn't seem consistent with what I read. This is very different than the neighborhood sites. In the same email, he states that with a minimum lot size requirement removed, the developer can and has proposed using lot sizes as small as 800 square feet. That's a pretty darn skinny, tall house, 800 square foot lot. So what is affordable housing? Is it for low-income citizens or at a lower sales price so more people can afford it? If the unit costs $350,000, which is sort of cheap nowadays, an owner would be paying about $2,000 a month, plus whatever is added for the cost of the metropolitan district. And if you've read the Post in the last few weeks, you'll see those are very dangerously expensive. And how does the increased density preserve open space? At least 4,700 cars added to the streets will negatively impact transportation. If you think RTD is the answer to no impact, I think you are dreaming. You are dreaming. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And also, suppose that each unit only has a one-car garage. Where are the other 2,350 going to be parked at night? Or if it has no garage, where do you park 4,700 cars? Takes a lot of space for that. The demand for water will be drastically increased. Again, how much water will be used for all the flushes plus showers of at least 4,700 people? That's a lot of water, plus laundry, dishwashers. And I won't elaborate, but the amount of sewage will be drastically increased. And you can imagine 4,700 flushes and what that would cause. So I think the water situation and the impact of increased traffic should cause a no vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Richard Stewart.
Good evening, council members. I didn't plan on speaking tonight. I just plan to observe and see what I thought about the discussion. But the suffragist women celebrating the women's right to vote encouraged me to speak up. The winning of the women's right to vote was a major shift and political turning point and social turning point in the United States. I'm a retired history teacher, high school history teacher. I also know that what happened after, aside from the women's suffrage victories, the 1920s happened. If you saw what happened in the stock market today, you had a little bit of a glimmer of what happened in the 1920s. It was a huge real estate bust. The 1920s was based on fictitious capital, smoke and mirrors, and it came back to haunt especially working people in the United States. The stock market today, I hope not, but it should cause us to think before launching 1920s style waterfront, swampland developments. I think that's where we have a chance to avoid a historic mistake with this uplands concept. We should shoot it down. We should save what we have and enjoy and appreciate what we have on the hill for our future citizens of Westminster. That's hard to do because it's a kind of a luscious plum waiting to be picked, especially if you're banks and developers. But if you're regular people who are living in Shaw Heights or near the farm, as it's known, you're worried, you're scared. It's traffic, children's safety, and just a big loss. And there would be no going back. It would be a giant scar on the top of that hill. That would be done. That hill would be over. The farm will be gone. You can put a name on a subdivision and a bunch of subdivisions and call it the farm, but it's not the farm. It's not the past either. It's a rotten future that we can have now a chance to avoid a real estate boondoggle in the type of boondoggles we saw in the 1920s. Let's learn from history, fight for justice like the suffragists did. I was involved in fighting for the Equal Rights Amendment. I was involved in fighting for environmental justice. And also as a teenager in Houston, Texas, I was involved in fighting against racist attacks in the black community. So I ask you to step into that moment in history and make our own moment in history and say no to this boondoggle, scam, horrible crime against nature and against the people of Westminster. Thank you.
Kevin Work.
Good evening, Council. I'm Kevin Work, for those who don't know, representing Friends of Stanley Lake on behalf of restoring trailer boating to the lake. Since my last update, I asked the city about getting a tagging committee back together or a qualified task force that is solution-oriented, including people from the city. I've yet to hear back from anything, not even a simple yes or a no, or just kind of where you guys stand. Can we start readdressing that issue? Since we've last met, there's new products, new GPS solutions that are out there that are just as good as the no-key lock that we've talked about before, if not better, easier implementation, things that would make the fear of contaminating any water obsolete. Make it really easy for the city, and we really want to help out and really do most of the work for you guys. We just need some guidance and a way to do that. My last update, I told you there's about 140 plus citations at Stanley Lake last year. I had a chance to kind of go through those. A little over 40 of those were trespassing, a little over 40 were failure to spray, lots of fishing and swimming violations. But to give you a reference, the year before in 2018 when there was trailer boating, there was only 19 failure to spray trespassing tickets. And if you read the details on those tickets, 14 of those were called in from the boaters, witnessing people coming from outside the lake to just throw their rafts, canoes on the lake without being sprayed or tagged. So you don't have that anymore, and the numbers clearly have gone up. And that's just another thing we want to make the boaters. We're trying to help. We're not all bad people. We're trying to help keep the water safe as well. With that being said, I'm just asking to hear back from council or city officials on how can we help and where can we go from here and kind of turn the light switch back on and get us out of the dark here. Thank you.
Dan Hamilton.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name's Dan Hamilton, and I also would like to speak for a few minutes about the boating community and the boating issues that we've been through in the last year. And it's the first time I've addressed you all, except for a couple of you may have been at the first big town hall meeting. 400 or 500 people came after the first announcement that boating was going to be prohibited. So I spent some time in the months following that addressing a number of personal issues and didn't get to keep up with a lot of the task force meetings and so forth that were going on here to study the problem and try and take care of the problem. And it's only been in recent months that I've dug back into those records, your written, printed records, and listened to the audio tapes, etc., tried to keep track of what did go on and get caught up. I feel like, and this is just my personal opinion, I'm not representing a large number of personal friends or anything, I'm representing myself right now, but I think many other boaters would agree with me that there is a solution now, and you've heard of it before, and maybe because it was simple and seemed kind of easy, in the beginning. I remember hearing it first spoken of at that large city council or council meeting, or I'm sorry, city hall meeting. And it's one boat, one lake. I'm sure a lot of you remember it and have heard of it. The task force appears, from my studies, to have addressed it a number of times, but not in a very great detail. I found on May 21st in their meeting, Jason Genk addressed it pretty significantly toward the end of the task force meeting and suggested that city council, or I'm sorry, not city council, but city staff would further look into it. He stated in those notes that he felt we were going places with all of this and we were going to have some solution. He was very optimistic if you were to read the notes of that May 21st meeting. Having seen this, I decided and took it upon myself to talk to Mr. Genk, and he graciously gave me an appointment. I came to see him, and we went on and talked about one boat, one lake. And he said to me, yes, city staff was very much interested in this. That same minutes from that same meeting on May 21st, I wasn't surprised to hear him tell me that in person, because it said right there, I feel like we're going to get there. And in bold print on the printing of the third page, recommendation for follow-up. Huge bold print. Staff to look at one boat, one lake solution for the future 2020 and beyond. But in minutes and notes, in meetings thereafter, I think there was maybe one or two more meetings, didn't really come up. Prior to going in to see Mr. Genk in person, I had talked to Holly over at the lake, and she informed me that there just wasn't a lot of interest. But I thought that was confusing because I remember actually chants at the meeting of 500, one boat, one lake, one boat, one lake. So it takes more than just a few people to come up with chants. I think it's something that needs to be considered. I think it could be implemented very quickly. I've been in the home building business, not development business. I don't want to put my name on that, but I've been in the home building business. I know about materials and building and fixing and that sort of thing. There were some excuses about one boat, one lake, discussed that infrastructure wasn't good enough. I would put forth and relish the opportunity to talk to anyone, and I told Jason this, anyone, about what needs to be done over there to get it ready for boats. And it's pretty simple. And it's not the $50,000 that we saw printed in the minutes of an earlier meeting. It's more like maybe $10,000 would get it going. And I'm sure that could be handled by the boating community pretty handily. So I really wish Mr. Tripp were here tonight to hear this. I had no way of knowing that he wouldn't be, but maybe I could contact him. Maybe others could contact him.
Hamilton, your time is up.
And I thank you for your time, but that's basically my message. It'll work.
Mr. Ragsdale.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, getting old talking about uplands, so I want to talk about the View Corridor. The View Corridor from 82nd and Lowell is absolutely spectacular. And if you prove Councilor Bill B to increase the density on the B parcel, that View Corridor is going to be gone. The major purpose for the increase in the density on that piece of land is so that they can gather the houses closer together. That means that there will be no view between them. And if they build them as tall as the city decided they were going to build their pump house, there won't be any view through them. So if you pass B, you're basically kissing the view corridor goodbye for the future, once those houses are starting to build over there. Our house is on nearly a half an acre, and they're asking to make lots as small as 800 square feet. That's just ludicrous. I understand that they're going to develop that land before it's all over. I'm not naive enough to think that they're not going to. But there are ways to protect the view corridors and to protect things like that. And by increasing the density on that one piece of land, you're basically going to eliminate that view corridor. I hope you'll consider voting no on B, or on I think it's 3, which is on B. And I thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Ms. Buckley?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors. My name's Ellen Buckley, and I'm here to speak to you about Uplands, shockingly enough. I wanted to start off by saying I know it was a very hard decision for you all, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness that you took in reaching your decisions. However, I vehemently disagree with the 4 of you that decided that Uplands had met the criteria. They clearly have not met the standards of 11.5.121. They just haven't. And that's in the record. This is not new evidence. Number 6 of the standards is furthers an important public policy, including but not limited to a need for affordable housing. Okay, they have never said this will be affordable. They've said it's attainable, which is a delightfully vague term, which means nothing. They never said they would include what we would consider affordable housing, which is a goal of the city. Protection of historic resource, well, it actually destroys the historic resource of the dryland farmland there, the orchard, the open pastoral view, so it destroys that. And preservation of open space, once again, destroys that. Or a reduction in water demand. So increasing the density doesn't reduce the water demand. This city, I think, if you're going under old studies of how much water we have and how much water we'll have in the future, this is a huge mistake. Scientists are saying all the time now, Colorado's water pack, our snowpack, is going to decrease drastically in future years. It has decreased like 20 to 60% since 1950 every time they take snowpack. It is going to continue to decrease. Climate change will affect snowpack in other ways. We're going to have less snow. We're going to have a less long snow season. So we're going to have higher temperatures. We've already increased 2 degrees. We're expected to increase 6.5 degrees in the next 30 years. So we're going to have rapid snow melt of the snow that we do get, which, as we know, doesn't provide us with good water storage. You have to look at climate change. You have to look at water, what we have now and what we actually will have to plan for the future. And increasing density on any parcel in this city is not acceptable. And it certainly doesn't meet the standard right here of 6. Also, this clearly doesn't meet 8, will not negatively impact the transportation system. And we've heard a lot from the developer about, oh, we're going to add a lane. A lane is not going to do anything. It won't help because you've got pinch points at 84th and 88th. So north of 88th and south of 84th, you're still stuck with 1 lane. There's no way to fix that. You can't widen that. And to add that density on parcel B, if you do that, where are these folks going to go? Their only option is to come out on Lowell or to go down Bradburn to Oakwood Drive. Is that fair to shuttle all those folks through that neighborhood? You're talking about increasing almost 50% of what's currently allowed on that parcel. They really have failed every single standard here. And I was just very surprised that folks felt they met them because they clearly have not. And why is the developer allowed to bring this project to the city piecemeal? First, they bring us these 3 parcels. Oh, just deal with this, and you're not allowed to look at all the rest of it. You have to look at all of it at once. And going forward, I hope the city requires them to bring the entire project at every stage, because the entire project is what is going to affect this city, and it's going to affect us detrimentally. So I am asking you to please vote no on second reading. Please change your mind. These are unwarranted changes. And I was, like I said, shocked, very shocked that people thought they met the standards. And you seem to feel like, well, I'll look at it at the PDP, I'll look at it later. Look at it now. They haven't met it now, and please vote no. Thank you.
Carl Meriton.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, Council. I appreciate you giving the time for us to speak up. Again, I'm here to speak against the uplands and to save the farm. I'm going to take a more of a higher level look. I think everybody's speaking their parts and done really well. I'm here to really be an advisor for the council and for the mayor. My background, I have an MBA from CU. I currently work in the insurance industry, so I do have some business knowledge, and some of the things that came up during the presentation from the developer I found a bit disturbing, and so I wanted to kind of hopefully talk about those to you. One of them was brought up really by the city manager, talking about property rights. And so, well, you know, the Pillar of Fire owns the property, so they can do whatever they want, and once the ORREIT owns it, they can do whatever they want. Generally, property rights are pretty expansive. However, when they, for instance, let me give you an example. I have a friend who has a property next to a beautiful river. Well, just because he has a property next to a beautiful river doesn't mean he can dump batteries and old cars into the river, because that would be detrimental to the public good. So property rights are limited to the public good. And I would say in this instances, whether it's the Pillar of Fire or the developer, please take that into mind, that property rights are great, but they are limited. Just because I have a certain amount of money doesn't give me the right to destroy a crown jewel of Westminster. And I think it was a good point brought up earlier. It's very easy to like, oh, well, we're just talking about parcel B, but this is a very slippery slope. So 4,700 cars or whatever the number was, I think at last time in the record I put, it's basically a First Bank Center is what we're going to put there. Would definitely increase traffic. Beware of unqualified statements. I said last time, more people, less traffic. More people, less water. More concrete, less water. Better drainage. Things like that don't jive, that don't feel right. They really aren't right because they're really unqualified. It's a market. I'm in marketing. It's a marketing. It's a wonderful thing. I drove by when they had their little trailer out there. They didn't invite any of us to go out there and celebrate with them. It was just their little marketing ploy with the drone and all that. It's all smoke and mirrors. So please just beware. I'm trying to advise the council. I live here because what will happen is they'll take something that's a public good and privatize it, chop it up and make it profit. So they'll move on. He'll have Jim and his team will make a lot of money. They had some nice, beautiful Audi SUVs they brought in from wherever they live, but they'll be gone. And we'll still be here in this city after they've taken their profits. So please take these issues into account when you do vote. I actually did a little research on you, Anita. You went to Regis. I went to Regis as well. They drilled into us public good. Just please remember that as you do your votes and as we move forward. We only have, my daughter gave me this. My daughter wrote a letter to you guys, Paloma Marita. 14% open space we have in Westminster, and that's including the farm. So if we take that away, where are we going to be? What is Westminster going to be? Are we going to be, just totally concrete, or are we going to have the jewels? Are we going to take our history and protect it? So those are the things I wanted to advise you on. And just one thing that also stuck out to me is those that were in favor of it all had financial financial gain in mind. So the notes that I have are the developers, obviously, and profit isn't bad. I have an MBA. Profit isn't bad, but it was funny to me that the neighbors were against it, but the people who have financial involvement were for it. So let me give you the list of those. Developers, shop owners, Chamber of Commerce, even the schools. The schools are going to get a paycheck out of this. And one of the points that I had in the record is that this is a bit of a shaky school district, and I know they told the council, and they said, well, we could absorb these students. That's possible, yes, but what I would say, one is in the record, I put that we are teaching in the district out of huts, so the temporary stuff, so maybe the money would help, but then again, you have more students. So, it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors. And second of all, the district, and I have kids in the district, and I have people that work in the district. So I say this with all due respect, but it's a struggling district. So some of the reason why they don't have the students is because, for instance, my oldest, I sent to Pomona. People are moving out because they don't trust the district. It's struggling. So to then now put a bunch more in there, but just to hand them a check is a little bit shaky. So I know you don't control the district, but as Westminster, it's a brand, right? Westminster's public schools, Westminster
Carl,
City.
that's your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Terry?
Welcome, Mayor, councilors. My name is Brett Terry. I'm here to speak a little bit more on behalf of Friends of Stanley Lake. I think Kevin and some others have reported that there's been literally no news since the announcement came out at the end of November there. I did go back and re-listen to those announcements, and it did say that the city manager and his staff would like to look at opportunities to restore trailer boating when those come up. If we don't work on them, they won't come up. We're not working on them now. It seems like the decision's already been made. Just silence and we'll let this blow on by. It's just horribly, horribly sad that we can get to here. We could open that lake. It was brought up again tonight. One boat, one lake was very, very simple at the beginning. It had some limitations. If you guys as leaders to city management were telling them, please let's get something done with direct inputs on let's make this happen, not just come back and give me status on the status quo. We could do this. It could be done. One boat, one lake would work just fine. If that's what the city manager wants to do in that situation, it could absolutely be made to work. But it won't work if no one's working on it. I do know this for a fact. We worked horribly hard for 9 or 10 months, and we made great progress, and then it just stopped. We really, as Friends of Stanley Lake, would love to get re-engaged. Let's figure out something that would work. What I would like to see, I listened through quite a few of your study hall notes. It's not a topic that's even coming up there. Obviously, you've kind of got your hands full with some other buzzing fires. This needs to become a buzzing fire that we can address together. And I think you guys have an opportunity as leaders to give the city manager a little bit more firm direction on we want that resource being used for not only Westminster residents, but all the thousands of people that they bring in a boating season that buy gas, that buy food. All of the ecosystem can be made to work, and it could be for the good of the whole city. Okay, we can do this safely. We can do it without any risk. If one boat, one lake is the best way to do it, and the easiest way, let's do it. If it can only be done for 100 boats, let's do it for 100 boats. Make that good faith effort. And what I'd really like to get you guys to hear out of this is with a little bit of guidance and assistance from you. Bring it up as a study council topic. Let's talk about it. If you want to bring somebody in from Friends of Stanley Lake, bring in the whole task force committee. Let's do it. The opportunity is here. The data's not that old. We were waiting for a no-key padlock update. I called no-key today. No one from the city's even talked to them. And in fact, they didn't have any trouble tickets open in your name. If we were working towards that solution that hard, I would have expected both of those things to have been done right now. And they aren't done. Okay? Now maybe no-key, we give that up. Maybe the lock's not going to work. There are other ways. Maybe one boat, one lake could work. It doesn't need any equipment. This could be done. So please urge you, once again, talk amongst yourselves. I would love to see this become a topic where we make progress. And just shelving it and burying it in a hole is not progress. That's not leadership. That's not progress. That town is suffering because of it, and everybody in the ecosystem. Thank you.
Mr. Booth.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, good evening. I'm not going to use 5 minutes tonight. Surprise, surprise. We'll all get to go home a little bit earlier, maybe. I would like to invite the council, the staff, and the city engineers to go take a hike. And I don't mean that the way it sounds. The hike I suggest is a hike down Lowell Boulevard to the intersection of Shaw Boulevard on a average rain night. And I invite you to stand in the middle of Shaw Boulevard with the water rushing by up to your ankles. And then I want you to imagine that hillside above covered with 2,300 homes, the drainage that normally goes down into the ground, now rushing down that hill to Shaw Boulevard, where you wouldn't be able to navigate it with a kayak unless you had great skills for Class 5 rapids. Before any development is put on the side of that hill, it absolutely must be a prerequisite to have a drainage plan in place to protect the people at the bottom of that hill. Everything else aside, that needs to happen for the safety of those people. Now, with that said, I'd like to thank the ladies from the Women's League of Voters and double down on their suggestion that the upcoming census is very important, not only for the money that it brings into our communities, but also it could mean we get another congressional district in the state of Colorado, which means as voters we get more representation. So I want to thank them for all their hard work as well.
This time that concludes all the members of the audience that I have had sign up. Is there anyone who did not have the opportunity to sign up? Yes, sir.
I'd like to just get an opportunity to say something.
Come right on up to the counter and tell us who you are.
I think everybody's
We need your name.
talked about water. It's Doug Kirshner. I've been a resident since 1968. One thing that people weren't talking about is quality of water. We had a plutonium fire at Rocky Flats, what was it, 68 or 69? There's plutonium in Stanley Lake. Do any of you understand what the half-life of plutonium is? It's 20,000 years. What are you doing to assure that we even have a quality of water other than raise the rate? 2, we just had a shooting in Broomfield at a Walmart. We had one in Washington. My granddaughter's been locked down in school 3 times. And this is particularly interesting. You say they're safe, but you're putting kids in a real high kill zone for a real high body count. You really don't have a solution. And Kristen, this is for you. Because if it come down to my grandchild, there's going to be a big lawsuit. Because your plans are impotent. You're putting these kids in harm's way. Just like when these guys right here are out on the street with all the guns out there, they're in harm's way. We don't even have seat belts on school buses, but you got a seatbelt law. And in closing, I've sat here and watched all of you on your phones. You wouldn't let your kids do that, 17 or 16-year-olds at a dinner table. That's socially stunted that you're not listening to these voters, to your community. Shame on you.
Is there anyone else who did not get a chance to talk? Mr. Palmer.
Good evening. I'd like to just address comments made by the developer in the last meeting regarding traffic. After doing a little bit of research, information that was provided to me in a traffic study from Tuesday, September 12th, 2017, 2-hour study, the intersection of 84th and Lowell, almost 2,500 cars in a 2-hour period. That doesn't take into account the increase in traffic from this new development behind City Hall or any of the traffic that's now overflowing into downtown Westminster. I just think that we should reconsider this, think about it, get some current statistics and data to back up what the developer's saying. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, seeing none, we'll close this portion of the hearing. And we've been asked for a short bio break, so ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a short recess. All right, council, if we could reconvene, it's approximately 8:08. Back on the record. Next item on the agenda is a report of city officials. Mr. Andrews? No report. Just for the record, Mr. Tripp is out ill tonight. That's why he's not here. Mr. Andrews is filling in tonight. Next item will be city council comments. Council, any comments, Ms. Seitz?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, I wanted to respond to Mr. Work's comment. I don't think anyone thinks boaters are bad people. So we appreciate you coming and your continued advocacy for what you'd like to see happen at Stanley Lake. I'd like to thank everybody who came out tonight. I think Westminster is very rich in a residency that cares a lot about the community and wants to preserve and maintain a quality of life that they've enjoyed, and they want to pass it on to their kids. But I do want to make sure it was clear earlier that we are not allowed to use any of the information that was given tonight in regards to the vote we're making tonight. The public hearing did in fact close. I wanted to alert you to a few issues that are going on in the city. This Thursday, there is going to be a telephone town hall. It's your opportunity to hear what's going on in the city and to ask questions and make your voice heard by city council. If you would like, we're going to be calling into people's residences, but if you want to make sure you get called, or perhaps you want to be called on your cell phone, you can go to our website and enter your number, and the automatic dialer will call you. I also want everyone to know that there is a draft water and sewer rate proposal open house that is going to be on the 26th at City Park Rec Center from 6 to 8 o'clock. So come listen to what our Public Works Department is proposing to us, what they feel is the minimally responsible projects that need to be implemented to maintain a clean, safe, reliable drinking water system, and see kind of what the range of options are. And then finally, for those of you that have kids that are getting to the age where they want to or need to start thinking about the SAT and the ACT, at the Irving Street Library on March 7th, there is an SAT-ACT strategy class. It's from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. It is free. I think it's really one of the strategic plan goals that we have in this city council has, is to make sure we have strong educational offerings and opportunities for our residents. And this is an example of one of the ways the city is trying to further that goal. I just really appreciate everyone coming out tonight, and I am touched by the level of passion and commitment that we have for our community.
Mr. DeMott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to thank everybody who came out tonight and took your time to speak to us. The other thing I want to share for those here and maybe listening online, I actually won't be able to attend the telephone town hall. I teach class at Red Rocks Community College on Thursday nights, and I have a class that night, so I have a bit of a conflict. And my students expect me to be there, so that's where I'll be at. But I'm confident you're in capable hands with the rest of council to answer your questions. The other thing I wanted to follow up with what Mayor Pro Tem Seitz shared. If you can't make the open house for the water rate event, there's another one on March 18th at the MAC. So if you can't make this one, don't fret and try real hard, because you'll have another opportunity on March 18th at 6 o'clock at the MAC.
Ms. Scully?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to also thank everyone who came out tonight. You know what makes our community great is that we are so engaged in Westminster. We have very passionate residents and a passionate city staff and a passionate city council, and I think that's what makes us great. So thank you. Also, because I do know how passionate you all are, don't forget to vote. And if you're looking for a place to drop off your ballot, there is a box right outside this building, and so please bring it at your earliest convenience. Remember, Tuesday is Super Tuesday.
Ms. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for everyone who came out tonight and spoke passionately on topics that are important to you. I also, not reiterating what my other colleagues have said, there is a February 26th Historic Landmark Board meeting at 7 p.m. here at City Hall. And it is a public hearing for historic appropriateness for the 3915 West 73rd Avenue building, which is the former rodeo market. So if you have thoughts on that, please attend on Wednesday at 7 p.m.
Other comments, council? Hearing none, let's move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is a group of routine matters to be acted on with a single motion and vote. These were reviewed by the council at the pre-meeting. There was no request by council or any member of council to have any item removed from the consent agenda, so at this time we will open a motion for that. Mr. Voles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the City Council adopt the consent agenda, item 8A through 8C.
Mr. Dumont.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote with your lights. Motion carries on a 7-0 vote. We have no appointments or resignations tonight. The next item on the agenda is item 10A. This is a public meeting to notify the community that the city is pursuing the use of statewide revolving funds. This will be a presentation by staff.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Max Kirschbaum, Public Works and Utilities Director. While our Utilities Engineering Manager, Julie Kaler, is getting her presentation set up, the purpose of this evening's meeting is, as the title states, to conduct a public meeting as a step toward pursuing state revolving funds to fund one of our critical wastewater infrastructure projects, and that after this is completed this evening, that's one step further in the process toward obtaining the funding through the state. At this time, I'll turn it over to Julie Kaler.
Thank you, Max. Mr. Mayor, councilors, thank you for this opportunity. Max went over my first slide. And as a reminder, we're talking about the Big Dry Creek Interceptor Sewer area. Can you hear me okay?
You need to get a little bit closer to the mic, Julie.
Okay. Testing, testing. Better? As a reminder, we're talking about the Big Dry Creek Interceptor Sewer, which begins close to Stanley Lake and runs northeast towards Huron and approximately 133rd, where it discharges to the city's wastewater plant. Here's a map of the project area. I have 4 purposes for the meeting tonight. The first is to notify the community that the city is pursuing state revolving funds to pay for the construction of the Big Dry Creek Interceptor Sewer. I'd like to provide information from the project needs assessment and some alternatives that were considered. Provide information from mitigation measures from the environmental assessment, and then receive comments and questions from community members about the presentation. The project needs assessment identified the purpose and alternatives. The purpose of the project is to improve capacity limitations and condition-related issues in the Big Dry Creek Interceptor Sewer. The project area near City Park and 104th Avenue with Westminster Boulevard intersection included some alternatives analysis. We considered 2 alternatives: remove and replace the existing pipeline. Alternative 2, install a new parallel interceptor and line the existing pipeline. We selected alternative 2, to install a new parallel interceptor and line the existing pipeline. We chose this alternative because the parallel pipe was needed to meet flows during peak wet weather demands. The existing pipe will be lined to extend its useful life. In the future, once construction is complete, operations and maintenance will be possible without bypass pumping or service outages to businesses or residents in the area. During construction, we'll have improved constructability because the trenches will be shallower and we will have less bypass pumping overall compared with alternative 1. The environmental assessment identified some mitigation measures. These mitigation measures identified are common to a well-executed construction project like dust abatement, work hours, noise. Staff will incorporate these measures into our contract documents. During construction, we will monitor how the measures are being implemented at weekly construction project meetings. And we have this in process right now. We are communicating across city departments and with community members through website and ongoing coordination meetings about these measures, mitigation measures, and we will take action as appropriate to make sure that the construction respects those mitigation measures and proceeds properly. Thank you. I would love to receive your comments or questions if you have any.
At this time, I'll open up the questions to anybody on council who has any. All right, seeing none, staff, you have any other things you want to present at this time? Otherwise, I'll open it up to the public. Okay. Ms. Sykes?
I have a quick question about the parallel pipeline that'll be built because it's going to be next to a pipeline that we're repairing. Is it going to have the capacity at the eventual failure? Do they have similar expected life expectancies? Are you following what I'm saying? Are we going to end up in a situation where one fails and then we'll have to go back? And is that contemplated and that's the best course of action? I guess I'd like to understand that a little more.
Okay. Lining a pipe will extend the pipe's life. So say we give 60 years lifespan to a brand new pipeline. Mm-hmm. So the new pipe will go in 60 years. The lining, probably 50 years on a lining. Okay. So they'll sort of track, lead and lag. And I don't yet know how they're going to be used, but I imagine flow will go through them so they'll be both in use at the same time. Mm-hmm. But the beauty of having the parallel, mm-hmm. and this is a higher impact area, if we need to do maintenance on one pipe, the other will be able to take the full flow. So we won't have to shut both down or shut businesses down or even a temporary outage.
I apologize that increased redundancy wasn't immediately obvious. Thank you.
No, that's okay. Thank you.
Ms. Scully?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So these are state funds we're asking for, and I think I read it was $102 million. Is that correct?
No.
No.
I believe council authorized us up to $102 million in some sort of debt funding.
Okay.
In our agenda memo, we talked about up to $30 million for the state revolving fund. But because of the timing, we won't need to ask for the $30 million. It'll be something less than $30 million to be determined, hovering around $25 million.
Okay. And so that's state funding.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a debt we're taking on.
Correct.
Okay. So we'll have to pay it back.
Yes, we will.
But we have a plan for that.
Yes, we do.
Okay. Can you explain that plan?
If I could add a little bit to that, it's very similar to the public debt that you authorized and was issued recently, also as part of that same one, up to $102 million. We made a decision based on need and timing, which part of that debt we sought on the market, and which part of that debt we could hold until this time period to issue through the state revolving fund. We got an interest rate on the public market for less than 3%. We expect through the state revolving fund for this issuance to be an interest rate that is probably a little bit lower than what we got on the public market. So again, it's to our benefit, and this debt will be paid off similarly over the course of, I think the time period is 20 years.
Years. Have we done this in the past, like this?
Yes, we've received state revolving funds before.
Thank you.
Other questions from council? Seeing none at this time, I'll open up the comments to the public. If anyone has any comments or questions regarding this application that we are prepared to present, now would be your time to come forward. Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing and move to item 10B. This will be resolution number 4. Ms. Scully?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to adopt resolution number 4, establishing the 2020 calendar year interest rate for non-city funded public improvement recovery contracts at 6.75% and an interest rate of 3.38% for the city-funded public improvements.
Mr. Bowles?
Thank you. I second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any questions or comments from council? Mr. Seymour? Got carried away. All right, never mind then. All right. Ms. Parker, this is a roll call vote, if you would, please.
Mayor Atchison.
Yes.
Councilor DeMott.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sites.
Yes.
Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
Councilor Scully.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Councilor Bowles.
Yes.
And the motion carries on a 7-0 vote. Moving on to item C1. Mr. DeMott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move based on the recommendation of the city manager to find that the public interest will be best served by approving AT&T Mobility as the sole source vendor and providing the police department with cellular and mobile connectivity services and award them the contract.
Ms. Sites.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion or question by council? Seeing none, this is a vote with your lights, please. And the motion carries on a 7-0 vote. Next item up is item C2. Mr. DeMott, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to authorize the cumulative expenditures with AT&T Mobility not to exceed $200,000 annually in 2020, 2021, and 2022, subject to annual appropriation.
Ms. Sites.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any question or comment from council on item C2? Seeing none, this is also a vote with your lights. And the motion also carries on a 7-0 vote. Next item, excuse me, next item up is item 10D. Ms. Sites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move based on the recommendation of the city manager to find that the public interest will be best served by authorizing a negotiated purchase contract of Beck motorized flow control valve actuators and any auxiliary spare parts required from the sole source provider Harold Beck and Sons Company in an amount not to exceed $100,000 in 2020, renewable for up to 2 additional one-year periods, subject to annual appropriations for 2021 and 2022 in amounts not to exceed $100,000 each year.
Mr. Bowles.
Thank you. I second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any question or comments from council on item 10D? Being none, ladies and gentlemen, this is also a vote with your lights. And the motion carries on a 7-0 vote. Next item on the agenda is item 11A. This is the second reading on Councilor's Bills number 3, 4, and 5. Ms. Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 3 on second reading to approve the proposed comprehensive plan amendment for Parcel B, a request to change the land use designation from residential R-3.5 to residential R-5. This recommendation is based on a finding that the amendment generally meets the criteria set forth in Section 11-5-21B of the Westminster Municipal Code.
Ms. Sites.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or comment by council? Mr. DeMott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to reiterate what I said the first time we read this particular item, that I'll be voting no because I do not believe the criteria was met due to traffic and the distance it is from our main arterial, as well as I don't feel that it was this particular parcel was harmonious with the surrounding area.
Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I took time within this last week to listen to the public hearing again to make sure that I was really listening to everything heard, all the pros and cons. Looking at the historical record, this area of land was always meant to be developed. How this developer has proposed the development, just by the data, seems to be strategic and responsible, reducing water capacity usage and providing updated infrastructure on drainage and sidewalks, and adds owner-occupied housing and not subsidized on our taxpayers. I've had folks from both sides of the aisle contact me about the pros and cons, and I've heard voices approving for rezone to not approve any part of it, to only focus on parcel B, or to approve all of it. And balancing the voice of all is not easy at all, and my decision does not come lightly. The concerns I heard on traffic and water and infrastructure will not go unchecked. This project will go through multiple reviews with more specifics on how it is to be developed. And I will continue to be keen on the fact that development needs to pay its own way. And for that, I will stand by my approval on parcel B.
Any other comments from council?
Thank you. I also want to reiterate that this was not an easy vote. We did hear from the community, and I do think that there were some credible concerns. However, by the criteria that's set forth at this stage, I did feel it met the criteria, and I listed it in my earlier comments. I also felt it was shaky, and there was a few areas that I want to really examine during the PDP process. My hope is that we will be able, during the PDP process, to evaluate this in aggregate instead of small parcels, because I do think both the developer and the community had a hard time separating the whole project from these three individual ones that we were forced to only evaluate by our own ordinance. So I do hope that at the PDP process, some of my concerns will have been addressed, and that that is the time that we really dig into the traffic, the density, the how the land use, how close they are, how large the view corridors. It's where we get to see some of this more fine-grained information that we have heard people express concerns over. So I appreciate that we have residents who are advocates. Keep that hat on. Come back if it makes it to that PDP process and let us know what your concerns are. But I think based off of this, the criteria we've set forth, I have a responsibility to vote to support this.
Any other comments from council? Ms. Parker, this is a roll call vote for item 11A1.
Counselor DeMott.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Sites. Yes. Counselor Seymour.
No.
Counselor Scully.
Yes.
Counselor Smith.
Yes.
Counselor Bowles.
No.
Mayor Atchison.
Yes. The motion carries on a 4-3 vote. Ladies and gentlemen, the next item up is item 11A2. Ms. Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 4 on second reading to approve the proposed comprehensive plan amendment for parcel D. A request to change the land use designation from office to residential R-8. This recommendation is based on a finding that the amendment generally meets the criteria set forth in section 11-5-21B of the Westminster Municipal Code.
Ms. Sight.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any comments or questions by council on item 11A2? Seeing none, Ms. Parker.
Mayor Pro Tem Sites.
Yes.
Counselor Seymour.
Yes.
Counselor Scully.
Yes.
Counselor Smith.
Yes.
Counselor Bowles.
Yes.
Mayor Atchison.
Yes.
Counselor DeMott.
Yes.
And that motion passes on a 7-0 vote. Ms. Scully, if you would, the last one, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 5 on second reading to approve the proposed comprehensive plan amendment for Parcel E, a request to change the land use designation from office to private parks/private open space. This recommendation is based on a finding that the amendment generally meets the criteria set forth in Section 11-5-21B of the Westminster Municipal Code.
Ms. Sights?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments by council on item 11A3?
I do have one
Okay.
quick. During the public hearing, I know I asked staff a question about this parcel, which was the same constraints on this piece of land that make it not suitable for office, I think also make it not an ideal place for a park. And so while I'm fine changing this, I hope that this will not in the future count towards the public land dedication.
Any other comments by staff or council? Seeing none, Ms. Parker, it's a roll call vote again, please.
Counselor Seymour.
Yes.
Counselor Scully.
Yes.
Counselor Smith.
Yes.
Counselor Bowles.
Yes.
Mayor Atchison.
Yes.
Counselor DeMott.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sights.
Yes.
And I need one more vote up, folks. Got it. That motion also carries on a 7-0 vote. Ladies and gentlemen, for the benefit of the council, we have two other items. We have a two-year budget overview, and we have the legislative update that are scheduled for tonight. We'll take a short recess, and we will convene in approximately 10 minutes at 8:45 in the council boardroom. We are adjourned.
I didn't mean it. And even if we hadn't agreed, I just really appreciate your approach.